8-bit joystick. So I actually had a TurboGrafx-16 for a time as a kid, and I wanted to talk about some games that I definitely remember playing. They're okay, not terrible, not amazing, just perfectly average. But given the somewhat limited library of TurboGrafx-16 games released in the US, these titles are an important part of the system's story. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy this kind of video, then consider subscribing for more turbo-tastic fun. Now, on to the games. China Warrior is known for really big character sprites. You play as a well-animated guy looking a lot like a Bruce Lee clone straight out of a Shaw Brothers movie. Your mission? Walk from left to right, punching and kicking your way through cultist-looking enemies, fireballs, and various animals on some epic quest for revenge and righteousness. One of the downsides of these huge sprites is that your character has an equally large hitbox. Enemies approach quickly, and off-screen projectiles are constantly flying your way. Thankfully, you can take multiple hits, while most enemies go down with a single punch or kick. China Warrior is what we used to call a twitch game. It demands fast reflexes. Sometimes mashing the attack button at just the right moment is enough to clear out the baddies. It does make me wonder though, who's hiding off screen just launching animals and rolling boulders at our hero? Seriously, that's a pretty passive-aggressive way to try and stop a martial arts master. Just stand off screen and toss a snake or two. China Warrior is one of the simpler games mechanically, but not graphically. It's simple, but simple doesn't mean without charm. Sometimes a game with a basic flavor profile, a bit of schmaltz if you will, can be enjoyed with not needing a lot of extra spice. That's China Warrior. The first time that you see it, those big sprites are impressive. And then you play it, and the gameplay feels pretty basic. However, there can be a certain depth in that simplicity. Sometimes you just want to turn off your brain and punch some dudes in the face. I had no idea back then that it was based on a Japanese anime called Mashin Hero Wataru.
Cool, Japanimation.
But I definitely picked up on the general Japanese vibes and tokusatsu influences. Especially when the hero summons a giant robot suit via colorful, totally not Pride Month rainbow beam to beat up bad guys, including a dude with a walking gun for a head. Japanese game design in the mid to late 1980s got wonderfully weird when they thought that the rest of the world wasn't looking. To their credit, besides naming the hero Keith Courage, they didn't heavily Americanize it. There's no Brock and his jelly donuts situation here. The weird Japanese stuff is left intact. Many TurboGrafx-16 fans love to speculate about what might have happened if NEC had chosen a different Pac-Land game for the American release. Say R-Type instead of Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. Japan doesn't do Pac-Land games included with a game system, but American consumers expected it. Especially after Nintendo hit the Pac-In ball out of the park with Super Mario Bros. Looking at the PC Engine's games from 1987 and 1988, it's a tough choice for the US summer of 1989 launch of the TurboGrafx-16. Yukai Dochuiki and Bikuriman World are just not gonna do it. Personally, I would have liked Wonder Momo. In retrospect, I think that the TurboGrafx-16 should have been based on the core graphics and even pushed back 6 months, but they really wanted to hit summer 1989 so that Sega wouldn't get too much of a lead start. Releasing a shmup would have been risky, but then again, so is Sega's Altered Beast. Turning Mashin Hero Wataru into Keith Courage is the least painful option for NEC and Hudson. Still, if you ask most gamers to name their favorite TurboGrafx game, Keith Courage probably isn't high on their list. And that's a shame because for an early PC Engine title, it's a perfectly okay game. It represents an average but still fun experience on the console. It's interesting how many games from the mid to late 1980s, including this one, felt the need to include light RPG elements like grinding for currency to buy weapon shop upgrades. Let's call it the Curse of Zelda 2. Another thing that I noticed, if you stop the screen from scrolling right at an enemy spawn point, an unlimited number of them will appear, much like Ninja Gaiden. That's not just lazy level design, that's lazy programming. The music and graphics are actually pretty good. They benefit from scan lines, which adds some depth to the 2D artwork. The dithering and sprite work also create a sense of depth beyond what you would typically expect from what is, more accurately, an 8-bit game with a 16-bit graphics processor. Despite NEC putting 16 right there in the system's name. Keith Courage is by no means a bad game. It's just no Mario or Sonic, and it really needed to be that caliber of a title to successfully launch a game system against the competition in America. Next up is Pac-Land. This is an arcade-perfect port of a Namco arcade game starring Pac-Man, though I don't recall ever seeing the actual arcade cabinet in the wild as a kid. I definitely remember the Hanna-Barbera Saturday morning cartoon, and this game was made to tie into it, featuring the same character designs, music, and overall vibe. I try not to question why Pac-Man is wearing a Germanic alpine hat, has a fairy living under said hat, and is on a quest to get magical shoes from a fairy goddess. It's all good. No, seriously, you walk through a standalone door in a field and meet a fairy goddess, and she gives Pac-Man magical shoes that allow for double jumps, even quadruple jumps. And then the music changes and you have to run home to your Pac family in their suburban house. Pac-Land was a pre-Super Mario Bros. Platformer. While it involves Pac-Man running and jumping from left to right, Super Mario Bros. Was so incredibly influential that Pac-Man's controls feels clunky by comparison. You hold one button to run and press up to jump. This goes against the now standard control conventions where directional inputs handle movement and a button handles jumping. It almost feels more like a rhythm minigame, something more akin to WarioWare. Thankfully, there is an option for a traditional control scheme if you prefer it. The graphics are nice, colorful, and very Pac-Man, but the game is super tough. You are constantly chased by ghosts, and it is incredibly easy to fall to your death. The PC Engine TurboGrafx-16 version is significantly better than the Famicom port. However, the graphics, originating from 1984, were pretty simple even for their time. We got the game on TurboGrafx in 1990. Those 6 years were an eternity in video game development. What was contemporary in 1984 was positively ancient by 1990. I mean, this game has pre-Mario style jumping and was released on the TurboGrafx-16 in the same year as Sonic the Hedgehog debuted. Despite this, it's not without its charm. Here in 2025, I deeply appreciate those 1984 Showa Japanese arcade vibes. I also appreciate the unlimited continues because, believe me, you'll need them. This game is hard as hell. Playing it now really takes me back. Once you get used to its unconventional controls, it can be a pretty good time, especially if you enjoy challenging platformers. Luckily, the checkpoints are generous, and you respawn quickly after you die. And you will die, repeatedly. So, Pac-Land was understandably derided upon its 1990 console release for being a product of an earlier time. However, if you're looking to connect with some 1980s Showa Japanese video game vibes today, this archaic but charming title might just be just what you're looking for. Back when the TurboGrafx-16 was still on sale, figuring out what games were good was tough. Without the internet, it was pretty tough deciding which shooter to get, even though the TurboGrafx had some absolutely amazing ones. I put my money on Aero Blasters, and what I got was a very pretty, very competent 16-bit shooter. It delivered an arcade-like experience for the time with plenty of fast action, but it lacked the polish of a Blazing Lasers or a similar top-tier shmup. Made by Kaneko, it featured two-player simultaneous action and pretty decent-looking sprite work with parallax scrolling. You pilot a spaceship/fighter jet, flying from one side of the screen to the other, blasting armies of oncoming alien baddies. It wasn't super creative, but it wasn't bad either. The on-screen action gets a little chaotic, but that's par for the course, but I still had a good time playing it. I think games like this hit differently on a CRT with no latency and those bright, vibrant colors. A CRT lets you zone out and really focus on the on-screen mayhem. When people discuss 16-bit shooters on the TurboGrafx-16, Aero Blasters isn't usually one of the first names that come up, but no one seems to actively hate it either. It occupies that just okay space. This is a decent game that actually got a US release, which makes me continue to question NEC's logic in leaving so many genuinely great games in Japan while making room for mediocre or downright bad Western developed titles. While Aero Blasters might have felt like the Thunder Force that you had at home, now it comes across as nostalgic. No one's getting an Aero Blasters tattoo or trying to collect a complete set of Kaneko games, but it's a decent game, and like Pac-Land, it definitely feels different in 2025 than it did back in the 90s. So I had a TurboGrafx as a kid, and then I did something really dumb. I got rid of it. I've made a lot of regrettable decisions in my life, but parting with cool game systems is a reoccurring one that I still kick myself for, even if I was only 15 at the time. I recently just corrected this mistake and I got a TurboGrafx once again. I'm still baffled by many of NEC's choices regarding the games which they brought to America versus the games that they left in Japan, but hey, that's life. And if you're interested in original hardware, I actually recommend importing a Japanese PC engine. That's what I did. The system is also easily emulated and recreated with FPGA. Hudson Soft handled game publishing for the PC Engine and thus the TurboGrafx, but unfortunately, their publishing legacy is currently owned by Konami, who seems content to let these titles languish on a hard drive somewhere. The TurboGrafx has some truly great games, and it has some that are just okay. But even the okay ones can deliver some turbocharged fun when you need it. I am putting together some really neat videos, so you totally should click that subscribe button so you don't miss them. And let YouTube know that you like this video by hitting that like button. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome. Play retro.